Hey, it's Michael. So I want to get straight into this. No beating around the bush because it's going to be a long video. This is a video about the harsh truth about Jon Jones' career. No, this is not a video questioning Jon Jones' achievements because USADA aside, Jon Jones is a person who's had multiple title defenses against some of the sport's most legendary names, by the way. A guy who's defeated multiple generations of fighters, and a guy who has a virtually unblemished record. Side note, can we take away that DQ loss to Matt Hamill? I mean, let's be honest. First of all, that DQ was more of an indictment of Steve Maddagati's putrid reffing and not Jon Jones pummeling Matt Hamill into a pulp. Second, why not just make it a no contest? Because it's not like the match was close at all during the time of the infraction. Let's say if it was Hardy versus Crowder, then I get it. But in this situation, it was over. It's dumb and it should be turned into a no contest. End of story. Okay, so back on topic. What this video is about Jon Jones' saltiness over Khabib being currently the #1 pound for pound fighter on the UFC rankings. And honestly, this video is not meant to change your minds on where you think they should rank. If you think Jon Jones is higher than Khabib on the GOAT list, then fine. If you think Khabib is higher than Jon Jones, sure. Also, things can change. It's not like Jon Jones is done. He can still do things to change this conversation, whether positive or negative. But what this video is meant to do is to examine why Jon Jones is so salty about the pound for pound rankings. And the short answer is, when you take a look at his career, honestly, this is all he has professionally. Let me explain. So think about it like this. Jon Jones bursts onto the UFC scene as the golden boy of MMA. He's running roughshod all over the MMA landscape. In 2011, he had it all. He was the youngest UFC champion ever at 23. He was the first MMA athlete to be sponsored by Nike, and the fans were behind him. Not even a DUI in 2012 could stop him from having it all. Shogun, Rampage, Machida, Evans, Belfort, and Sonnen all fell by his hand. He even proceeded to lay waste to the next generation of fighters like Glover Teixeira, and how about that barn burner he had with Alexander Gustafsson? But then in 2014, that's when everything starts to be taken away from Jones. What do I mean by that? Well, he gets into that infamous press conference brawl with Daniel Cormier, which he didn't start, by the way, but nevertheless, he loses his Nike sponsorship thereafter. Now, while Jon Jones has said that Nike didn't drop him due to the brawl, you'd have to think, because of the brawl and the timing of the loss of that coveted sponsorship, it does infer that the brawl definitely did not help and was at least part of Nike's decision to stop the partnership with Jones. But it's fine. Jones still has the fans, he has the belt, and he did beat Cormier. Albeit he failed a drug test for cocaine metabolites, but he's basically thought to be one of the best of all time. But wait, there's more trouble. Just a couple months after that fight with Cormier, 3 months to be exact, he hits a vehicle while under the influence, and according to witnesses, he flees the scene and then only returned to grab some cash and then fled again. It gets worse because the other vehicle in the accident was driven by a pregnant woman. With that, Jones was stripped of the belt, the fans finally turned their back on him, and he had time to reflect. But see, this is the crazy thing, because Jon Jones still had the best of all time moniker to him, and despite a failed USADA test to his name just a week before UFC 200, he was found not to have knowingly cheated and served his time. Then he redeemed himself by beating Daniel Cormier in a 3rd round KO finish. So once again, Jones had the belt, he had the fans, and he had a moment where he can finally bask in the sunlight. But if you know the story, you know this was fleeting, as he tested positive for Turinabol and was stripped of the title again. Once again, the fans turned their back on him, and I think at this point, most fans were done with Jon Jones for good. So it didn't help that with the picogram scandal of UFC 232 that reared its ugly head, And while his decision wins over Smith, Santos, and Reyes were done by all measures clean, they didn't exactly inspire confidence. So now at this point, Jones has the belt, and while most people recognize his greatness, there are still questions about his legacy due to the PED failures. Also, he's definitely not in the fans' good graces due to the multiple scandals he's been in. But wait, it gets worse. See, this next part is complicated, so I'm gonna do my best to summarize it. So what happened was that Jon Jones allegedly was exploring a fight at heavyweight versus Francis Ngannou, but then after some back and forth with the UFC about fighter pay, and then some confusion, Jon Jones vacated his light heavyweight title to pursue his options at the heavyweight division. So now Jon Jones doesn't have a belt, he doesn't have fan support, there are questions about his legacy, and to add a cherry on the crap sundae, in March of this year, a wild story came out that Jon Jones was charged with a DWI, negligent use of the firearm, possession of an open container, and driving with no proof of insurance. This legal situation ended with no jail time, but the point is, Jon Jones professionally and personally has a lot of issues. Now look, this isn't me pleading sympathy, as Jon Jones is reportedly worth anywhere from $3 to $10 million, and that means things could be much worse. But the point I am trying to make is that when you think about what he's had to what he has now, he has lost a lot despite not really losing at all. He doesn't even get to say that he's undefeated technically because of that DQ loss to Hamill. So now I can finally answer directly, why is Jon Jones salty? Well, it's because if you really think about it, in the context of MMA, that #1 pound for pound ranking is all he really has right now. Psychologically, I can understand why he's so upset, because that means that he doesn't have anything that isn't up to question or isn't tainted in somebody else's mind. And I think that matters a little bit. Add to the fact that theoretically, you could make an argument that making Khabib #1 pound for pound was an emotional decision, although I wouldn't go that far because Khabib definitely deserves it, or at the very least, it's a heated debate. What I will say though is, when you think about all these things and you put into context, it's no wonder why Jon Jones is salty. And that's the harsh truth about his career. Because the truth is, everything about his career is up to question. There are no definitives, there are no hard answers, and I can understand why that's unsettling to one Jon Bones Jones. As always, please leave a comment, please like, and please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers to get that sweet, sweet money. So if you could tell your friends to subscribe, that'd be good too. Until next time, I'm Michael, and stay safe.